What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sounds Heavy Podcast. I'm your host, Darrell, and with me today, I got Trey.
Trey.
We got to smooth that out a little bit, trying to figure out my host persona.
Oh, forget smooth, man. Just going to roll with the punches.
Just going to say it, just like, Trey.
I'd rather sound like a moron than sound like a professional.
What if you, now, it's not ever cool when people do this in public. It's only cool when they do it in the venue or in the booth. But what if you screamed your name? Like,
oh, yeah. That would have to be pre-recorded.
So we could justify.
I could probably stand 40 feet away from this mic and it would
still
pick it up
still
really
peak,
loud.
Still peak. Yeah, awesome. So, all right, Trey. So, we're getting ready to do, this will be our first actual numbered episode of the Sounds Heavy Podcast.
Yeah.
We have recorded an interview with the band Cleansing of the Temple.
Yeah.
They got to squeeze in as kind of our first actual interview because they were down. They came in town and they recorded some music with me. Had a really good time with the guys. Had a lot of fun, and they were super excited to be on the podcast. Like when I told them, like, hey, here's your blocked out recording session. We're gonna knock out your song, and then we're gonna do the podcast. And they were like, oh man, that was like freaking Christmas for these kids. I was like, yeah, that's awesome.
Well, so I have a question. Do you feel like Danny Glover?
How so? Just being old?
Do you feel too old for this shit talking?
Riggs.
Just straight up, man. Like interviewing those guys. Well, let me back up. So there's two things that's happened within the past couple weeks.
Uh-huh.
I'm 32 years old. Okay,
which is still really young compared to me.
Right. But there's two things that's happened in the past couple weeks that's made me feel just like I'm an old geezer for some reason. Right. One is I started doing BJJ at a local gym, and legit, almost everybody I roll with is like 10 years younger than I am,
mm-hmm. and
they'll be a black belt by the time they're my age, and
yes.
I'm just starting. Right, so that makes me feel really old, mm-hmm. especially when a dude that's 22, 23 can like whoop my butt, and I'm 40 pounds heavier. It's pretty crazy. But the other thing was interviewing these guys because they're a good 10 years younger than both of us, and mm-hmm. bro, it's weird to be talking with a band that's like fresh and sees this world as like. Sees it, mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Take it by the horns and kind of drive it where you want to go.
Yeah.
I feel like there's if they keep it up, if they stick with it, whatever they want to do with their music, if they keep up being a band, they're going to run into challenges. They're going to run into adversity. They're going to run into some really cool times. They're going to run into some times where like this sucks, But all that being said, it made me feel like, well, I don't play music anymore.
In my day, sonny.
I feel like an old dude. It's weird, man.
It's funny because I actually discovered these guys on Facebook. I'm in a South Carolina Musicians Wanted group. And what I want more than anything is another guitar player to sit down and hammer riffs out with, I mean, I'm 35, getting ready to be 36. And throughout all the time we played music and all the time I've ever played music, I have only had a guitar partner, you know what I'm saying? Like the monkey for my head, you know what I'm saying? Like for such a short amount of time, And I never had the guy that we could feed off each other.
Yeah.
Back when we started, it was me and Joy got so frustrated when we were writing that he would just... You do your thing and I'll just kind of layer on top of it, which is cool, but there wasn't a lot of back and forth, it wasn't exciting. It was frustrating for him.
Yeah, well, it makes me feel a little bad too because guitar is the one thing I've never really sat down and tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
I play guitar at my church, but it's acoustic guitar, and so I play a lot of chords, and I'm really not all that great. I can do a little bit of finger picking. I can do most of your generic, 5-6 chord songs, whatever. But I've never picked up a 7-string and just tried to shred. It's something I've wanted to do. I've considered it quite a bit, but every time I start trying to pick something out, man, I feel like I sound terrible. And then you're like, man, I wish I had somebody to write with.
Well, see, the thing is you've played every other instrument, even in our band. So, you can't do it all, or there'll be no need for any of us. And
Maybe that's the plan.
maybe. But I like having you on drums personally. No offense to Luis, 'cause I love Luis on drums. But when it comes to just creating new stuff, like I like having you there, because like I feed off you. With Luis, it's different. It's a different type of energy. You know what I'm saying? With Luis, it's like he comes in with so much precision.
Yeah, he's real technical.
Yes, and it's so like I always feel like with Luis that I am not good enough to play with him. Like when we were writing our stuff, like it was definitely the simplest music I'd ever written, but I almost felt like there's two things when I play with my 7-string. I naturally start to play slower, chunkier, heavier stuff.
Yep.
And then my riff count drops in half.
Right.
And like if you listen to the stuff with you on drums and me playing guitar, there's just riffs after riff after riff after riff after riff.
Right.
With Luis, it's holy crap, man. He just fills in all the gaps. So there's really I don't. It's almost like I get lazy, but not intentionally lazy.
Well, and I think he likes to try and complement the music. Whereas when I play drums, man, I kind of, this isn't always the case with drummers, but I really feel like a drummer is the backbone.
Oh yeah.
And so when I'm behind a drum set, whether I'm playing like really simple music or whether I'm playing like metal, I feel like I'm supposed to drive it. And so when I change, everybody else changes. It's not like I'm trying to keep up with guitars. I'm trying to make the guitars and the bass and whoever keep up with me. And so that's kind of like, that's why I lack in technical ability, because I can put a beat to whatever.
Yeah.
You could play a riff and I could put a beat to it. It might not be like what somebody had in mind, but it's going to sound okay. Whereas somebody like Luis, he's got so much technical skill, man. He could do anything he wanted to on top of any riff.
Yep.
Whatever, But I sometimes I feel like he feeds off of the riffs, Whereas I always just tried to create a space.
Yeah.
I wanted to create a place to go.
And see, whenever I write with Luis, like here's my riff, and then Luis is like, okay, I'm going to take your little paintbrush and I'm going to paint this entire freaking like crazy multi-layer portrait, and like it's like he starts playing, I'm just like, oh man, that's really cool. And like I'm not skilled enough to keep up with him, so I kind of just have to, here's a fat just chunky piece and he's gonna all over it.
Well, it's been awesome the couple of times I've like helped him try to record his drums, because basically I'll just sit behind a computer and hit go.
Yep.
And that's even before I knew anything about recording software and all this kind of stuff. But it was awesome because like he would have stuff that he wanted to do intermittently in like a bunch of riffs or in a bunch of just sections of beats and stuff. And it's like if he didn't nail it or if he didn't change it in some way, he wanted to go back and do it again. So it was a lot of like get started, play for 15 seconds, and then he missed something. Just one single ding. And he's like, stop, do it again. And it takes a lot to be that kind of a drummer. It takes a lot to be that kind of a musician that like will strive for perfection and will strive for really, really tight technical sound. And I got nothing against those guys.
Nah,
it's
dude.
just never been me.
It's a pleasure. It was such a pleasure having him join our band so many years ago, and like I am a fan of his style and his skill. You know what I'm saying? Like I like associating with Luis because I feel like he brings that level up. I don't have to do anything. I'm still the terrible guitar player I was before that. It's just that it was like, oh, here's Luis, and then here's what Luis can do, and it's just so effortless. Like watching you guys play is always so fun because like you're into it, you're feeling the vibe, you know what I'm saying, the energy, and you're going and you're moving with it. Luis is like, oh, I'm here, and then like he just moves, and it's so effortless.
Yeah.
Like watching him play, it's like, oh, he's like, he always says, oh, Sovereign is such a hard song to play, but he doesn't look like it's hard. Like he looks like it's just man. I'm a machine doing machine stuff, and it's like, then he's done, and you're like, dang, dude, that was really cool. He goes, man, that was so hard, but it doesn't look like it. You know what I'm saying? Like so, it's been so cool as a guitar player having you two guys to work with because the styles are so different, and like you said, one you drive the you drive the vehicle,
Yeah.
you know, and then Luis is like, well, I'm going to basically paint the streets and the buildings, and I'm going to fill in all the space,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just like, it's crazy cool. But getting off of that and going back to the guys that we talked to on this particular recording, it was so cool watching those young guys get excited, because it reminded me of what it was like getting started, you know, and granted, we didn't. The opportunities are so different now. You know what I'm saying? Like it seems to me like it's going to be so much easier for them. I'm not saying that it really will, but just look, me as a disgruntled, you know what I'm saying, washed up and didn't really make it into the industry musician, watching these guys, and they're like DIY, like we're gonna host our own shows.
Yeah.
I mean, like we did the same thing, and
Yeah,
it was like, you know, they're live streaming their shows.
Yeah.
And that was just, like, I watched them the other night, and I was like, man, they just set up an iPad or iPhone or something, and they're playing, you know, and they got the crowd, you know what I'm saying, headbanging. It was cool.
There's resources that are available to them that were never available to us, and I think that's going to be something cool for bands that want to start around now. You know what I'm saying? Bands that have been around for 2-3 years, bands that are going to get started in the next 2 or 3 years. I think there's such a vast amount of resources just at their fingertips that, you know, we never had. And again, that's not like, I'm not blaming our lack of breaking into the larger industry on, you know what I'm saying, not having these resources. But like, I'll just give one example, right? These guys have recorded a couple songs, and they're not the best recordings in the world, but they're on Spotify.
Right.
And they've got thousands of plays.
Yep.
You know? They've obviously got a loyal fan base. They're obviously making a name for themselves just in putting shows on and networking with other musicians and other people, you know.
Yep.
And so the fact that they have something like Spotify, just Spotify,
Yep.
and Facebook, you know, to kind of push themselves as they network, is something that's just, I mean, it's insane to me, because when we would record crappy recordings and have these songs out, you know, like, we had to play shows, hope that we got a good crowd, and then maybe try to give some CDs away.
Yep.
You know, because there wasn't like, even when we got started, there wasn't Bandcamp. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't a player on the MySpace page, you know, and stuff like that. Like, we didn't have any of that stuff. You know, I remember when it was so
Pure Volume and
Reverb
Nation.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, was Pure Volume, because I remember when August Burns Red got started, and they released their first album, right? Before they released the album, they released 2 songs from the album. It was the first 2 tracks on the album. And I would sit in school on the computer at school and like listen to those 2 tracks on Pure Volume over and over again. And it's just, you know, we've come such a long way since then.
Oh yeah.
And things like Spotify, man, I love Spotify. In fact, I want to introduce a segment right now, and you can cut this part out, but I want to make a stinger for it. Just to have, because I think it'd be funny. But yeah, I want to introduce a segment called "Thank You Spotify," and just talk about a track or a band or something that comes up on like a Discover Weekly.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Because here's this service that I pay $12 a month for. You know, it's like a Netflix subscription or a Hulu subscription. I have access to literally any recorded piece of music that I want. You know, there haven't been very many bands that I've searched for on Spotify and I wasn't able to find. Even obscure, like, no-name bands, you know. But then Spotify gives me a gift. Every week, they create an entire playlist that's just new bands, new songs that maybe I've never heard before. I've definitely never played them on Spotify. You know, and every now and again, they'll hit a gem. Just a pure, like, that was awesome.
Yep.
And so the other day, I came across this song by a band called Unseen Faith, and it's a song called Wrath. That song, thank you, Spotify. if you're listening to the podcast right now, get on Spotify or, you know, Amazon or whatever.
Yeah.
Look up Unseen Faith, play the song Wrath. You'll thank me if you like heavy music.
Heck yeah.
But
it's heavy.
But that's the gift.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Yep. Spotify does that kind of a thing for artists, and it's a band that I would have never heard of.
Heck yeah. Likewise to that, you know, we were talking about, you know, scheduling and getting, you know, recording and talking, and I had a song picked out, you know, like my banger of the week, if you will. You know, like, here's the song that above everything else that came on Spotify that I'm just like, So good. And like the way I use Spotify, I listen to the playlist. I listen to stuff on random, on shuffle. Like I'm that Discover Weekly, you know, the release radar, all that stuff. Like that's what I'm after. And I've been networking a lot, you know, in the early stages of getting ready to launch this podcast with a lot of dudes on Facebook and these metal groups, metalcore groups, you know what I'm saying, hardcore, whatever, deathcore.
Yep.
And I've discovered a lot of bands. And once I started listening to them, then Spotify's like, oh, you like that? Well, maybe you'll like this, you know? So I had one lined up, but I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it till maybe the next time we record.
Okay.
Because this week I discovered 100 Suns.
Yeah.
Which is the dude from Norma Jean's.
Bro, that was another thank you Spotify on,
yes,
for me. Like I had no idea that dude was in another band. I mean, it's so super bands are a thing now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something that happens.
Yep.
Just all these bands that, you know, like back when I was in high school that I listened to, like, oh, just take a guitarist from over here and a vocalist from over here and let's combine them and make this super band. And it's like, well, that's amazing. And 100 Suns, that's what that is. Norma Jean, Every Time I Die. Yep. I can't remember the other bands, but
Death and Divine or something like that. Death Divine. The song Fractional is the song that came on, and it kind of encapsulates all the things I like about Corey's vocals.
Mm-hmm.
And this is more rock, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like opposed to your, I mean, I don't even know what I guess metalcore would be what you'd consider Norma Jean now, but like they do kind of have more rock elements. They're not as spastic as they used to be. But he's got this mid-range that's emotional, and it's very like Chino Moreno, like Deftones inspired.
Yeah.
And I love the two collaboration songs he's done with Norma Jean. Those are my favorites. And then, so this song Fractional comes on, and I'm just hanging out, listening. I'm like, oh my God, this sounds like the dude from Norma Jean. This is so freaking good. And then, like, I look up the band. I go to the Wikipedia. I was like, oh, that's because it is.
Yeah, it is that guy, yeah.
I was just like, instant love, man. Instant love. I was like, man, that song is... And that song is their best song, in my opinion, because since then now I've listened to everything they've got out there. And, man, it's just... I agree. I love Spotify. I thought I wasn't going to break away from Apple, you know, because I've got all these albums and songs.
Right.
But there's the playlists and the algorithms and all that stuff has really captured me, you know, and the past couple years especially. That's the service that I just don't know that I'll get rid of, you know.
Yeah. So with resources like that at a you know, a band like Cleansing the Temples, fingertips, where could you see them going? Just based on our little bit of interaction with them and kind of their attitude about things, because that's something that impressed me about them. Is like I said earlier, you know, they've kind of this. You know, seize the moment kind of attitude, and kind of, you know, they feel like they can conquer the world musically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they keep it up, man, as long as you got people that are willing to listen, you know what I'm saying, and chose to play, like, you can do it, you know.
Yep.
But I mean, where with this kind of stuff, where can you see a band like that's like a uber local band? Where can you see them going?
You know, guys like that with that hungry, get after it, DIY attitude, and I really like that they were like, not intentionally like branding that, but they're just like DIY. We're DIY guys. We're gonna do it ourselves. You know, like COVID's a thing. We can't go and do shows. Venues aren't open. We'll start our own. You know, we'll open up a venue on our own property, and it's working. You know, and that reminds me of our days of doing the Skag. You know, it's like, so I think guys like that can be very locally successful. You know, and it's not so much. It's metal. You know what I'm saying? You're only going to be so financially successful, minus the very small handful of breakout bands.
Right.
But even the breakout bands will tell you, like, it's hard to pay rent, you know, doing that stuff. I just listened to an interview with Frankie from Amur, and he's just like, you know, they're doing well enough, but it ain't like they're Breaking Benjamin, you know what I'm saying, and the older rock bands that we love, you know.
I mean, a middle income across the board.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But I think a band like Cleansing the Temple could have a very enjoyable and sustainable music career, you know, just DIY, doing it themselves. I mean, like, again, using us as an example, you know, like we broke in locally. South Carolina doesn't have a music scene.
No.
You know, all the bands from South Carolina don't even play in South Carolina. They don't even tour through South Carolina.
Hootie and the Blowfish, right?
Yeah, Stretch Armstrong.
That's the South
When was
Carolina
the last
band.
time Stretch played in South Carolina?
Yeah, good luck, bro.
Yeah, you know, like they knew, you know, and then the dude that the singer from the band booked here,
Yep.
but they didn't frequent, you know, South Carolina, like through the Eyes of the Dead.
Gee, Norma Jean used to play South Carolina more than Stretch Armstrong.
Yes, yes, yes. And bands come through here on their off days and their dates where, like, oh, I'm passing from point A to Florida, you know, or going from Florida up, you know. Like, that was how, when me and Steven were booking bands and stuff, like, that's how we would get some of the bands in, you know, or how he would get some. That's how you got August Burns Red for Holy Palooza. They were August Burns Red and Greenlee Estates had an off day and could come to South Carolina for very cheap because they were passing through.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to the question at hand. I think that they'll do well, and they'll tap into. See, the thing about today and the internet and the tools at our disposal is that there's a market for them. You know, there's a market for us. There's a market for every band we're going to talk to on this show. Every band that's listening to this. Like, there's somebody out there who digs what you do.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be 1,000 or 10,000 people. You know, 50 to 100 people can interact with you on a very intimate basis to keep you fulfilled.
Yep.
You know, and then you could constantly be cranking out music for those guys. Yeah, I talked to those dudes outside of the show and, you know, in the room, and like, they're gonna knock out a couple singles, and they're really gonna focus on the full length, and they've asked me to produce and record the album, and I was like, absolutely, I would. And I was kind of like not looking to do that kind of stuff anymore. I wanted to do our stuff, but, you know, but I've really fallen in love with their attitudes and their, you know, that, hey, we're young, hungry dudes, and we're going to do it ourselves and kind of thing. I'm like, hey, I'll help out with that, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, even back before we ever got started, like that's kind of how the metal scene came up. You know, like I listened to a podcast called Labeled, and it's all about how Tooth and Nail Records that eventually, you know, created Solid State Records as well, and you know, featured bands like August Burns Red, Live and Sacrifice. You know, all these really big name bands that have broken into mainstream, you know, music categories, and like every single one of those bands, that's the way they did it.
Yep.
And it was with less resources. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It was straight bootstrap. It was like, we want to play a show, so we're going to book a tour, and we're going to get in a crappy van, and we're just going to drive up and down the West Coast, up and down the East Coast, and we're going to play as much as we can play, even if there's only a couple people to show up, you know. And eventually they fine-tune their music to a point that they get signed. And I don't think that necessarily needs to be the goal of local bands now. Right. I think that's what we were going for, because that's what we saw. You know, and if you bootstrap it hard enough, you know, you can get noticed by a record label and get a deal. But now, because you can record all of your own music, you know, with barely a couple grand investment, you know, like, just put out really good music, you know, music that you love, that sounds good, you know, and people get on board. You know, especially if they get to meet you and get to see a show every now and again, you know, because that's something that, like, I used to not put weight on just what it was like for somebody to see you play live until I started noticing that there are artists that I didn't like, you know, just listening to their music, that they changed my mind when I went to a live show or when I saw a live show. You know, a really big artist that did that for me was Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran's like a super poppy, you know, whatever. But if you watch that guy play live, he plays by himself. And everything that he does, rhythmically and vocally and melodically, he does with his guitar and a loop machine.
Dang.
You know what I'm saying? So he creates these massive auditorium-filling sounds with his guitar and his voice, and puts on a heck of a show. You know, and it's like, I would have never liked that guy until I saw him do it. You know, and so I mean, it could be that way with metal music. You know, it could be that way just with local musicians in general. You know, make friends, dude. Make fans.
Yep.
Produce really good sounding stuff.
Buddy up with a couple bands. Show swap. You know, like, hey, we'll bring you guys out to our place. You guys take us to your frequent spot.
Yeah.
You know, that was one of the most fun things about doing this, was getting a handful of buddy bands, you know, and show swapping and going to places. And it's like, oh, like, yeah, we're going to play a show, but we also have this group of guys that we enjoy hanging out with, that we're going to, you know, we're going to watch them play. They're going to watch us play. It's a lot of fun. And I think now with people streaming their shows and their practices and, you know, having access to their music almost instantly, like there's such a cool opportunity there for bands to like hang out and work at the same time, you know? Like you're going to do rehearsals. So like nowadays you can stream your rehearsals or a section of your rehearsal. Yep. You can interact with your listeners immediately, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of like with the purpose of this podcast is getting involved in with these bands and these guys and talking to them. It's like, hey, what are you doing over there? Yeah. What are you doing that's different than this other guy?
Yeah. Let's build up the new music scene, right?
Yeah. The digital.
Let's build it up because, I mean, we thought things were changing when the streaming services came around, mm-hmm. you know, because it became impossible to make a lot of money on record sales, right? It became impossible to do that.
Yeah.
But now that COVID hit, it's added a whole other element that the music industry was not prepared for. You know what I'm saying? And so we have an opportunity just as musicians, right? Not that we're some kind of crazy influencers or whatever, or that we're ever going to be that, but we have an opportunity to maybe take some bands, you know what I'm saying, and just figure out what works. You know, what's going to get local musicians and the music that they love, what's going to get them noticed, what's going to get them out there for a larger audience.
Heck yeah. I do want to put this out there for the record that I was all over this streaming thing back in 2012, 2011. Several years ago, I was working, freelancing for this gaming website called ProvenGamer.com. And I was instrumental in like revamping the way the website looked at the time. It was very dated when I got on board. I was writing reviews and podcasting and doing a little bit of game streaming for them. And one of the suggestions I had was to create a live streaming music tab on the page. I said, and we'll link it with my Twitch. And at the time, I was trying to get my buddy Hector to DJ on there.
Yeah.
And I was like, bro, we could do like weekly, like musical live streams. Like go to the website while you're there, freaking watch a dude play some music, whatever. And I know that like gaming and music aren't necessarily like always associated with each other.
Right.
But there's so many amazing songs and soundtracks. So, bro, you can mix them. You know what I'm saying? Mix them together. I was like, and at the time, he and I were sampling gaming, like audio sections and segments into some of the dubstep rock stuff we were doing together.
Right.
And I had this whole big idea, and I was like, I pitched it to the owner, and he was like, I don't really know. He wasn't really feeling it. And I'm like, now here we are, probably 5 or 6 years after I had pitched that thing.
Yeah.
Probably longer than that now. And everyone's live streaming their stuff. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, and I even, like, the other day I saw an ad for an upcoming live stream show, okay? It was the weirdest thing in the world because I'm like, an ad for a live stream show that you actually buy tickets for.
Yep.
Okay? But it was the band Silent Planet.
Yeah.
Silent Planet, like, they're phenomenal musicians. Like, I love their music. I don't love all of their lyrics, but, like, as far as just music quality, bro, they're at the top. Like, they're really, really awesome. They're really, really well produced. And then this live show that they're going to do looks like it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Just because it's going to be them in a room with a bunch of lights and a bunch of just technical stuff.
Yeah.
And dude, it looks like it looks like it's going to be a live music video filming.
Yep.
Is what it looks like. And I'm just like, that's so insane to me. That's so crazy that people can just take the problem, which is we can't be in the same room with each other, and then say, well, okay, you like watching music videos, let's make a live show that's like a music video.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see how many bands just freaking take that and run with it.
Well, El Nino and Fire from the Gods just did theirs last week.
Yep.
And that's when I've been watching be promoted heavy, and I saw all the behind the scenes photos, and all the guys are hanging out, and like they got their set and everything. August Burns Red just did a big one.
Mm-hmm.
There was a metal fest, like a bunch of smaller bands, like 6 or 8 of them. I forget what it was called. Like, yeah, they rented out a building. They set up the gear, they set up the lights, and then they had like 4 or 5 bands come on and just perform. And they did a festival.
Yep.
Like it was like $5 or $6 a ticket to watch it. And I'm just like, and then the best part is like, as far as like a business model goes, is like you push, promote sell tickets to your live event, right? Now you've got all this digital content that you can rip out and make Instagram videos and YouTube videos. And then you can rip out and have live videos on your YouTube. So 10 years from now, when somebody's like, oh, I just discovered this band. And then you go back and it's like, oh, wow, they did some cool stuff. And like this stuff, like all of our performances, all 300 plus of the shows we played when we were a band, like less than 5% of those were ever recorded. And I swear to God, it was always the worst ones. Like the worst ones. Like our YouTube footprint is trash. It's so bad. But it's like, all those shows we walked away feeling like we straight slayed it, like we killed it, and the crowd was amazing. Like nowadays that stuff lives forever. You have a good show now, and it's like we've got it archived on all these platforms, and then we're drawing ad revenue. Now, so we were just a little, man, we missed it by just a hair. So now it's like getting ready to be 36. I'm like, oh, I don't, I would love to do some of this stuff. I don't know that I got it in me to do a ton of it.
Well, I think we're in a good position now too, because like, let's say we do get some cool stuff written, eventually, and get some decent recordings out. Like, I mean, we have the opportunity just to not leave home. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to really go anywhere. You drive 45 minutes across town, meet up at the house, whatever, and like just create content. And I think that's really cool. But that's neither here nor there as far as we're concerned. That's
absolutely. So, well, this is about the time where we need to land the plane, and we're gonna jump into the interview from the guys, Cleansing of the Temple. We're gonna play some of a little excerpt of their new music that's currently being worked on right now. Trey, thanks for coming on. Is there anything you want to push or promote before we get out of here?
Stay metal and listen to stuff that sounds heavy.
Yes, absolutely. That's pretty solid right there. Trey, you also have another podcast. You do a theology podcast called
Captive Thinking.
I wanted to call it Sounds Captive. I started to lead into that one. I just about made up a new show for you.
Hopefully we can link the shows up here coming sometime soon. I know we've talked about it in the past or whatever. But Captive Thinking is my other podcast. And
then I've got a few other podcasts I do. The main one I do is the Loot Bros podcast. It's a video game podcast. It's all over all the major streaming platforms, everywhere. I just added some new hosts so that I can maybe take a back seat to that and focus more on this. We've got a bunch of interviews scheduled coming up. I've been talking back and forth with a handful of guys, bands all over the world. Literally, I mean, like some of them, like I got some guys in Austria, some guys in Iran, some dudes in Europe. I've got one dude that I'm going to do an episode with. He's in Australia. A dude from Austria hit me up. Not to mention, of course, the United States stuff and things that are local to us. So we got a bunch of cool stuff coming up here on the Sounds Heavy podcast. So if you're listening to this, share it, like it, subscribe, do all the things. And one thing we will be launching tangentially to this episode is the Sounds Heavy playlist on Spotify, and I'll do a YouTube playlist for anyone who has their music available on there. And so basically what I want to do is every band that comes on here that's featured on our podcast, we're going to add a playlist, and it's going to be strictly those guys. So hopefully, a year, 2 years down the road, this thing has grown to 30, 40 bands, whatever, and we've got a really cool, mix of awesome, heavy music to listen to. And then if people are like, hey, what all bands have they had on there? That's a really quick way of getting a taste. Oh, wow, I like those guys. Maybe I'll go listen to that interview.
Definitely.
So cool. All right, well, thank you, Trey. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Tonight we are joined in the studio. This will be our first group of guests for the show. The band Cleansing of the Temple. We actually just got through recording one of their new singles that'll be releasing very soon. That song is called Die a King. And we've probably spent the better half of an afternoon together. And I'd say it's been a pretty good time. So guys, if you don't mind introducing yourselves, I'm glad to have you on the show.
All right, my name's Gavin James. I'm lead singer of Cleansing of the Temple. I am from Westminster, South Carolina, as so are the other dudes beside me. A little bit about me. I'm actually a student at Clemson University right now, and it's my favorite band. Oh, go Tigers, man! Go Tigers.
That's right. Good. Go Tigers. Yes.
Yeah. My name is Dustin Duval. I am the guitarist for Cleansing of the Temple. I've been playing guitar for probably almost a decade now, probably 7-8 years. Started learning in middle school. Stone Echo is a more local cover band around upstate South Carolina area. They've been to some areas. My father, he's the lead guitarist of that band, and he's the one that taught me. And so growing up, a lot of Van Halen inspiration and stuff like that. And I mean, that's a little bit about me.
What's up? I'm Jake from State Farm. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Jake Hollingsworth.
Like a dude.
I play the drums, and from Westminster, but I live in Walhalla. I just got a new job with Clemson University, but I'm definitely a Carolina fan. So go Cox!
Boo.
I've been playing drums for about 12 years now. I was on a little hiatus because I was in the military for 4 of those years and traveled around a little bit, but I'm back in it to win it.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Trey, I really hate that you couldn't be with us tonight. You're coming in via satellite. I think that's what they say.
I actually just got done recording a completely different podcast.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, it doesn't have to feel too bad because our bassist isn't here too. He doesn't talk much anyways, so I mean,
that's awesome.
He may have said a few things.
Awesome. Well, like I said, guys came into the studio today. We did some recording, had a good time, I think. I mean, you guys might talk a little junk when you leave. You know,
it was rad.
But I guess what we wanted to do here on the Sounds Heavy podcast is just to get in touch with smaller bands, regional bands, local bands, guys who are just getting started, guys who've been in the game for a while, but we're all looking for the same thing, and that's for people to hear our music. You know, just we want to write music, we want to perform music, we want to record music, and we have a lot of fun doing it. Tonight being a great example. So what I wanted to do is bring you guys on the show, especially since I had you here and you technically couldn't leave yet, and just kind of get a little bit of information about you guys and let you pimp your stuff. Okay, so the first question that I have for you is Cleansing of the Temple. Where did that name come from?
Okay, so me and Dustin, roughly 2.5 years ago or so somewhere in there, we had this vision of having a Christian metal band, and we wanted to be the nastiest band ever. But obviously, first we had to start brainstorming names. And I think a few names came up. The first one was, I have a buddy back home. His name's Gunnar Willer, but his first name's Waylon. So we were like, Waylon Willer, like you're wailing on something. And then we're like, no, that's a bit much.
Boo.
And I even think at one point, the name Metal Cross was brought up, and I was like,
dude, now that is so metal.
So now looking back at it, it's pretty embarrassing, but it's okay. Humble beginnings. We actually came across the name Cleansing of the Temple because we were looking at biblical names of figures, and just random stuff. And I came across a story at some point, and then I started looking into more stories, and I'm like, yo, what about that time, Jesus flipped all the tables over and was cracking a whip at people and super mad? Because, like, in a way, that would, correlate to what we're doing. We're mad at the world. And, although we're holy and we want to, approach things in the most Christ-like way, we also want to be really aggressive about it. So I looked up the story, and the story name was Cleansing of the Temple. And it honestly just stuck immediately there. We were like, yep, that's it. That's the one. So, yeah, that's basically the story of that, man.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome.
Trey and I, it's very good. Trey and I haven't been able to tell our story for our band name yet, and it is not near as cool as that. What were you going to say, Trey?
I was just going to say that their band name reminds me of that band that we used to listen to a lot called With Blood Comes Cleansing.
Absolutely.
Ooh. Yeah. I like that.
That's pretty sweet.
If you haven't listened to them, you got to check them out. They've got 2 albums out. One called Golgotha, and what was the second one called?
I honestly can't remember.
There's 2 different vocalists. One of them does like really like pterodactyl piercing highs, and then the other one He does more lows and stuff. And their second album is one of my all-time favorites in the entire world. So it's just totally cool. Awesome. All right, Trey.
Well, they brought up the name Metal Cross, and you're about to tell the story of our band name. I want to change Ninjaloot to Metal Cross.
Metal Cross is a pretty terrible name, but it's better than Ninjaloot. So I gotta, dude. So okay. First off, I kind of want to put it out there. I know we have a handful. This is a brand new podcast. Trey has another podcast he does. I have a few more that I do. And I know that a lot of our friends and other musicians are going to be listening to this. So I did want to put it out there. The first episode was about Ninjaloot, a Christian band. You guys are the first guests we've had on, also a Christian band. The next few bands we have coming up are not Christian bands. So I don't want anyone who's new to the show to be like, oh, this is only what it is. And it just kind of worked out that way. Not that that matters, because that's kind of our wheelhouse and what we're interested in. But we've got all types of bands from all walks of the earth coming on here. But I did, in the same fashion as you guys, we were a bunch of Christian dudes who want to start a Christian band. And so we got to come up with a Christian name, right? And so we came up with really, really like thought-provoking and awe-inspiring names like Colossal Butt Muscles and Butt Pirates and like the other guy that we started the band with. It was me, Trey, and a guy named Justin Joy. When we got together, Trey is like trying to be the voice of reason, and trying to be in like the keep us grounded. But Justin and I would act like little kids. And it's like, all right, we got to come up with like a really cool name. And so like Trey's, pitching out all these like Metal Cross style, bands or whatever. And we're just like, yeah, that's cool. But so would like putting spaghetti in my belly button. That'd be cool. Yeah. We didn't actually come up with that one. I just made that up. But like we were coming up with just really stupid names. And like, just like you guys were like, we want to have like a seriously cool name, but we also want to have something that's not so on the nose and so like pompous, So we just couldn't come up with anything. And then I randomly used a video game term that I heard used in a previous band of mine. And I was like, why don't we just Ninjaloot someone else's name and just put that on our MySpace, because that's when we started, when MySpace was a thing. Yeah. And then, and we'll just, like change it when we find something we really like. And then both Trey and Justin were like, what was that? What did you say? I was like, we'll just Ninjaloot somebody else's name. We'll take someone else's name. They're like, and then they asked kind of like Ninjaloot. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's pretty terrible. And
not pretty terrible. Very, very, very terrible.
Probably one of the worst names we had on our little list of names. And then Trey like wrote it out in his spaghetti or something.
That was a myth. That didn't actually happen.
I think he said, "Oh, I see it in my spaghetti. That's the one." So we put that stupid name on our MySpace, and I kid you not, it was like the next day. People were sending us like pictures of how to fold your shirt into a ninja mask, like people wearing ninja masks.
Oh, that's how we used to play shows.
Yeah, we would take and we would fold our shirt up and make it like a ninja mask, and people sent us like there was one picture that was really funny, and it was like a person with a ninja mask on, like squatting on the top of a toilet, like a toilet stall.
Ninja poop.
Yeah. Just like, and it's like, just really, awesome. It was really, it took off. It worked. And, and like our little bit of a fan base that we had and our friends and stuff, just like, oh, we're going to have fun with this because this name sucks.
That's awesome.
And then like, we would have our name on billboards and stuff. And like, on like, not like huge ones on the side of the road, but like people in their venues and stuff like that. And then in like, on flyers and crap, and people would spell our name wrong. Ninja Foot. Someone put Ninja Foot on there. I found a 12-foot Ninja's really good. They're really good. Man. Yeah, but not Ninjaloot.
That's what I thought.
And the worst part is it comes from the game World of Warcraft, to which none of us played or had ever played even one time.
Wow. You
don't have to lie to have friends, man.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I play a lot of video games. Never played that one. So, Trey, what you got for them?
All right. So, I actually haven't had a chance to listen to you guys' music yet. I'm really looking forward to listening to what y'all recorded today. But one thing I did want to ask is, like, What are some of y'all's musical influences that kind of direct what y'all play now?
Oh yeah, and we'll just go around in a circle with this because there's a lot at play here. Me personally, I'm a big Pantera guy. That's honestly the first metal riff I remember hearing as a kid, and hearing Phil Anselmo's screams, man, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And playing like football and stuff growing up, I always was attracted to songs like that because they got me amped up and excited. So I think early on, Pantera was in play, and then when I got into high school and even into college, I really dug deep into stuff like the Deftones.
Oh yeah,
because they're so versatile. They're so unique, and they have their own sound. But they can be like singing you to sleep, and then instantly they'll just break out the 8-string and just a gent away. And I'm trying to think. Lastly, I really pull a lot of inspiration from Slipknot as far as Corey Taylor's vocals go. That's honestly a big part of what got me into singing metal, and also probably Killswitch Engage.
Yeah.
I think their message of being super positive always impacted me, very well, and I love to pinch harmonics. So
yes,
yeah, I've got a lot of bands that play, but off the top of my head, those are the ones that have had the most influence on me. Not just as a singer, but just a metal enthusiast.
Yeah, as far as me, initially learning guitar and picking it up and stuff, I'd say my biggest one was my father, and just a lot of guitarists like Eddie Van Halen and Slash and a lot of classical rock 70s and 80s. When I started getting into heavier music, was also in middle school. Around the same time I started learning guitar. Watching Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 quickscope montages and stuff like that. I don't remember who it was, but I heard Above This, and I was like, man, these breakdowns are sick. These breakdowns are gnarly and stuff like that. I was like, well, this is really cool, And so Above This really was a huge impact on me. And when I started listening to heavier music, and another band called Bruised But Not Broken, they didn't get like super, super big or anything like that. But that's another group right there. And when I got in high school, influences from all around metal, it kind of just, my range just went everywhere, Parkway Drive is a huge one. Feeder to the Sharks. I think both those groups are actually are they from Australia? Both of them?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just a really, my inspiration for playing in this kind of music really is, I honestly couldn't tell you. There's so many different bands and there's so many different, breakdowns, and there's so many things you can do. It's so cool. I honestly, I couldn't tell you my like number one,
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what he said. For me, I've never been really good at band knowledge, like, oh, this band, particular name, particular drummer that came out. But I know when I first got interested in the drums is when I was a kid, I got a drum set. I always had beats in my head. When I was in school, I used to get in trouble for tapping and rapping on the desk and stuff, and teachers always get mad at me. But, as far as how I got into metal, as a kid, I had a Walkman. Just picture young Joe Dirt dancing down the but no, I would listen to my dad had tapes, and I'd pop in a Leonard Skinner tape, man, and give me 3 steps, let's go. But then fast forward, I never had an interest in metal music ever. I listened to country and like contemporary Christian, and I think the heaviest I ever went was like POD. You know what I mean? Not knocking them. I'm just saying, like, I didn't know anything heavier than that. And then I had a real good friend who was a drummer, and I just knew he was a drummer. I didn't really know what he played. And then I went and hung out with him, and he was playing like Panic Attack. Am I thinking of? My mind is just drawing a blank. But
Panic at the Disco?
No, Panic Attack is the song I'm thinking of, but it's played by really heavy prog rock band. Oh my gosh, old school Dream Theater. Sorry, so Dream Theater. I got really into that kind of stuff, and then August Burns Red. I found out they were Christian. I was like, oh, I'll listen to them because it's safe for me. You know what I mean? So they influenced me really heavy, just as far as like the message with the music. So back to what I said about band knowledge, I can't really give you certain band names and things like that. It was more of where I was at in life and what kind of music impacted me. And so going from August Burns Red, I started branching out really carefully. I would research bands that I was listening to just to make sure I wasn't listening to like really, trashy stuff. But I loved Extreme, that old hair band. You know what I mean? They kind of came in late on the hair metal scene, but they were there kind of anyway. I loved I was never really into like black metal where it was just thrashy all the time. Again, not knocking it. I have a real passion for music. I think it's really hard to do what we do, just in terms of putting in the effort, putting in the time to practice and play and do what you love. And so as far as being influenced to play what I play now, it's just a love for the music, for the time that it takes to do it, the techniques that are involved. I used to think screaming, why would you just scream into a mic? But now I think, that person put in time to train their vocals, to train how they do. The guitarist spent time, years to learn what they're doing, and the same with the drums. So here we are, man. I'm a drummer in a metal band. Let's go.
Yeah, and also, real quick, I forgot to mention Impending Doom.
Oh, dude,
you're a huge inspiration man. As well, huge because listening to them, they're a Christian group, and it's just like I feel personally that Christian music in general is very defensive. Yes. It's a shield, right? Or at least most mainstream Christian music is. And Impending Doom, it was like slapping you in the face. It's very aggressive, and we wanted to be like that as well. We wanted to be more of a sword than a shield.
Slaughter the demons that are crawling on my brother's back.
Let's go.
Yeah. Look, not to take 10 minutes on one question, I'll end it here, but just off of what Dustin said, Impending Doom is one of the biggest reasons we became a band, in all honesty, because that gave me hope. That was like, okay, well, I can start a metal band, and I can be in a metal band that's gritty, but also just talks about Jesus and how his love has changed our life, but we can also be really aggressive about it. So that was like a light at the end of the tunnel for us.
Well, dude, their most recent album, they had that, and I can't remember what the song was called, but they had that one line in there where it got all the music kind of slows down for a second, and he has that. He says, "I am a Christian, a faithful man of God. Come at me." And I remember hearing that, man. It like the first time I heard that, it sent chills down my spine.
Gives you goosebumps.
I was like, that's so awesome. Like just being that straight up and that, like, I guess kind of aggressive with being unashamed of what you are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I agree, man.
Heck yeah. Trey, when we played with Impending Doom, they were touring with Nailed Dead Risen, or were they on their EP?
They were on Nailed Dead Risen, and they were the tour that came through was with Whitechapel, I think.
Yeah, it was Whitechapel, My Children, My Bride, which was crazy because like that was something else. When we got to play with those guys, like we got to see Impending Doom, Whitechapel, and then My Children, My Bride back to back to back. That was that was a really, really good time for heavy music, and that was a brutal show. Just straight nonstop, man. It was awesome.
I remember that show. Like one of the things that was really cool about it was like you had a band like Impending Doom that's so like straight up about what they think and what they believe, and then you had a band like Whitechapel, and those guys were actually all really good friends. Like it was pretty funny because the guys from Whitechapel, they come out on stage and like they had nothing but red lights and like a couple of strobes and stuff. And like the dude after every song was saying stuff like "Welcome to hell" and "Open up the pits of hell" and like all this weird stuff. But then you had Impending Doom come out and they were like, they said what they say on stage, just their little spiel about the gospel and Jesus and all this kind of stuff. And it was crazy to think because talking with those bands, like they didn't have a problem with each other. And I think there was always just kind of this mutual respect that came, especially at that period with the music, because I don't know, we played with a ton of deathcore bands and a ton of like, I guess you'd call them satanic bands. And it felt like as long as you were respectful of, like one of you guys were talking about earlier, just the skill and the time that you put into making the music that you're passionate about, as long as there was respect for all that stuff, the shows went over awesome and nobody cared who they played with.
It's crazy because we would play in venues and we would, mention something about our faith on stage, sometimes more than others, and like we would have venues like lash out, right? Like places of business were like, oh, whatever. Sometimes it was like something verbally was said or yelled from the, you know what I'm saying, from the pit or, you know, crowd area. And then sometimes it would be like really nasty videos that get put on like projector screens while you're playing, you know?
Yeah.
And then, but then we would play with bands that are completely opposite as us when it comes from like a worldview standard, and they would get on stage and defend us.
That's awesome.
And it was such a cool thing because like it was like we had a mutual love and respect for the music and for the craft and the energy. And like, you know, I know not every Christian in the world has a good rap, but like as far as guys like me and Trey, it doesn't matter like what kind of walk of life you're in, you know, whether you share the same belief system as us or not. You know what I'm saying? It was like we came together. We friggin' had a blast playing high energy, aggressive music. We had a good time together. And like, you know, if you liked what we said, cool. If you didn't, cool. You know what I'm saying? Glad you were there. Hope to see you next time.
Yeah.
We played with some bands that were like what professed Luciferian bands. Like they were like, we are active in the pursuit of Satan worship.
Like behemoths.
And dude, like some of the, like we had some shows where it was like mutual respect where those guys were front and center watching us, you know, like they started off like, oh, well, we hate those guys, you know, and then we'd play shows. We paid them good we'd booked the shows, you know, and we just treated them like we would treat everybody else, you know, because like that's what you're supposed to do as a Christian. And that's who we are, you know, that's just who Trey and I are, you know. And you know, it's like those dudes went from we freaking hate those guys, stand in the back of the venue screaming and shout at them, to I'm going to stand front and center in their show. You know, we're going to headbang like the rest of us. So
that's awesome.
You know,
Yeah.
And you know, we talked a little bit about that kind of stuff beforehand because you know you'll know the different people you're going to be playing with every night. You know, and like the one common thing we all have is this love for heavy, aggressive, high energy music. You know, and that kind of leads me into my next question for you guys. One of the things Trey and I like to talk about all the time is like the different shows and the places we've got to play and the bands we got to share the stage with. You guys are doing something super special. So why don't you tell us about the market?
Well, the market, first and foremost, was God sent. We were actually stuck. I want to say stuck. We were fortunate enough just to have a jam spot in a lady's garage down the road from where the market is now. You know, we may or may not have the cops called on us like 3 times.
Definitely did.
And that garage, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. That garage was a huge evolution from even before that, you know, going from my mother's bedroom to Jake's attic.
Log cabin out in the woods, right? Yeah. So anyways, back to what we were saying. The market is actually what it sounds like. It's an old produce market that was constructed in the 1950s. And I'm assuming was in play from the 1970s there on, just because of the paint scheme and what it looks like and how things were built. And when we moved to the market to start jamming out as a band, I brought the idea to Jake. I was like, Jake, dude, look, we're in the middle of a pandemic, okay? There's no like DIY. We say DIY. It's just another word for underground. There's none of these shows going on, man. And we couldn't get a show anywhere because, number one, we're a Christian band. Number two, we're a Christian death metal band. Number three, there was a pandemic going on. So we were having a really hard time booking a show. And I was like, well, you know what? If we can't get on anywhere, why don't we just make our own show? Let's just do it. Because that's the only way we're going to get any better is by playing in front of people and, you know, making things work. So next thing you know, that building had been wiped clean of just stuff that had been sitting there for years, longer than I was alive. I'm pretty sure there was like jars of applesauce from like 1998 in there. It was weird, but we found some cool stuff too. Don't get me wrong. But,
some old dolls.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, we kept, we kind of just kept pushing it. And I finally reached out to a alt rock band from Greer, South Carolina. I was like, hey dudes, we've got this little building, you know, and do you want to come play? And of course it was one of these bands too that was just itching to play because they started playing and COVID hit and everything just stopped. So they came out and played with us, and thankfully they brought a good crowd, man. I mean, people coming from like Inman and Greer, and they still do, but that was basically the start of it. And then from here out, we just did our 3rd show at the market. And actually this week we just painted it. So this next show will be our 4th. Yeah. So, but yeah, the market is a God sent thing for us, and we're just really fortunate to be a part of underground music, because this was something that came to life in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and all these people were just piling in spots and doing it illegally, may I say, which is risky, but it's worth it. And there's nothing more metal than doing things.
There's nothing more metal than
that's what it seems
sneaking to do a metal show during the middle of a pandemic.
Middle of a pandemic, man. So yeah, man.
That was actually going to be my next question, because like I was like, so do you guys own the property, or what's going on there? But that's awesome. Just metal shows.
I'd be happy to fill in some gaps here. So, so I purchased my first home in this past July. I've lived in Westminster my entire life, but moved to Walhalla, found this nice little place for a really good price, and it came with a building. And I'm thinking, oh man, I've got this like commercial-esque property I can potentially make money on, pay my mortgage. So I'm brainstorming ideas, and for like the first 2 months, I just sat on it, trying to figure out what to do. And meanwhile, like Gavin said, it's just filled to the roof with this random crap. And the lady that sold it, she was elderly, and she didn't have anything to do with this stuff. She had a place to put it. She had a home in Georgia, and so she wasn't really interested in keeping most of it. A lot of it was old records. So Gavin kind of skimmed over this, but he cleaned it out. Like I was like, oh man, yeah, I'm going to be there. Let's do this. But I had to work. My work schedule's crazy. I come home one day, and he texted me and was like, hey, you mind if I start cleaning it out? And I said, sure, go for it. And I come home, and it's gone. Everything's gone. I'm like, yo, dude, I didn't know you were, gung ho about it. So he like really cleared it out.
Metal, man.
Yeah. And, well, he pitched the idea, and he was like, yo, what if we just set it up and at least start practicing it? And I was like, that's a great idea. We're not using it for anything. Next thing you know, he's setting up shows, and he pulls up this poster that he made. And I was like, yo, that's a sweet poster. And so he's got this band coming, and man, it's just taken off. Like really, God really put us in the place. And we don't really like to say illegal shows. I have a house party once a month. Some bands show up.
You know what? Everyone's wearing their masks, social distancing. I mean, it's
totally wearing
hand sanitizer.
Mosh pits are 6 feet mosh pits. Okay?
I did think about this too, because Trey can back me up on this. I used to freaking despise. I hated people throwing down at shows. I come from like the push pit era, like dudes wearing girl pants and swinging their fists in the air used to make me like nuts. I'm like, this is what happened, and like. So when we started our band like in 06 ish, like late 06, and that's about the time that the push pits were getting weeded out, and the throwing down and the punching and stuff like that. Like that was becoming the thing over here on the East Coast. I know that had been a thing forever, but that wasn't the case at all the shows I went to, and I was a frequent at the local venues and bars. And then I would go to all the big shows that came into town. I'd go anyways. And so now I'm thinking this is perfect. Throwing down is a solo experience that you can do 6 feet away from someone else.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Oh, and you mentioned a while ago about Whitechapel playing in all red. So Gavin's idea, but he was like, yo, we bought these little color changing lights at Walmart. We set them all to red. Every time we play in all red.
Dude, that's funny. I actually watched y'all's live stream the other night, and I was like, oh, wow, they got it lit up red the whole time. That's pretty rad. It reminds me of because Gavin, listeners won't know this, but Gavin is a monster of a man. You play college football?
Yeah, I played 2 years at Presbyterian, small D1 school here in the upstate. And now I transferred over to Clemson. I was just, unhappy there as a student mostly. I just couldn't make any friends, not knocking the place. I loved people in the program, but yeah, that's why I'm at Clemson now. So I'm hoping we'll see if Walker stuff happens.
Heck yeah. Well, so you play college ball and you're a big corn-fed guy, and
that's right.
So whenever you got really long hair. So when you're on stage, you look like Kane or the Undertaker.
He really does.
That's funny because I was about to talk about this mic I'm using. It looks like Kane or Undertaker used to drop an elbow on somebody.
He's Trey. I actually, you've got one of my condensers, and one of my other ones is missing, and so Gavin's
using the nasty old SM58.
The old Ninjaloot mic. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's a privilege, man. I'm honored.
I may have thrown up on that mic a time or two. I'm sorry.
Oh, man. I feel really good about it now.
Well, you probably won't catch COVID with it.
No, that's COVID proof right there. Trey, you got another one for the guys?
Yeah, well, I don't know how much time we got left, but I just wanted to ask what I think is a fun question. You guys can, rapid fire answer whatever, but I just want to know: are there any bands that are like guilty pleasure bands for you guys? Like bands that maybe you're embarrassed that you like their songs?
Oh my god,
Bro job.
Yeah, bro job. There you go. That's a good one.
Dude, they're brutal.
They're brutal and nasty.
Dude, they are. They are so.
I think mine, and it just makes me feel guilty because they literally make songs about everything under the sun and songs about, against things that I believe in. Probably Infinite Annihilator. Those guys as crazy and wicked as they are, I really can appreciate how really good they are at what they do.
Probably Attila.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Y'all are learning about each other right now. It's like, y'all been hiding all these guilty
Either that or baby metal, but I don't really.
Oh, dude.
I don't know.
Baby metal's good one time.
Wow.
I mean, the music is freaking
Baby
awesome.
metal's good one time. After that, no bueno.
Yeah, we I don't know. I'm thankful like I, kind of gained some sense over the years and I stopped, liking Five Finger Death Punch so much. That's a middle school phase. That's a middle school phase. Me and Dustin, we went to see Chelsea at Grin. And yep. I think the Casey Strain opened up for them and Left Behind, a really good band from West Virginia.
And Spite was there too.
Yeah, Spite was there too. But we were standing outside and we were just kind of wasting time, like trying to get some tickets. This was the Underground in Atlanta. And we walked up to a kid and we were just kind of chatting with him. They're like, "What's your favorite bands?" And he's like, probably Black Veil Brides and Breaking Benjamin. And I was like,
hey, easy. Breaking Benjamin. That's fighting
I
words,
love
man.
Breaking Benjamin.
We love Breaking Benjamin.
But never in my life would I tell anybody that's my favorite band because it's everybody's favorite band. Or it was there for a while. But nah, man, don't get me wrong, I love Breaking Benjamin. We just thought it was funny. They said two bands that most people would just kind of diss on.
Yeah. Dude, so Trey and I played this show. I don't even remember where. It was a really sweet venue. Like it was like on the backside of a building, but it was huge. Like it was this huge room and a really big stage. And we played. I can't even remember where it's at, but I remember we got interviewed by a webzine afterwards, and it was like this chick and this dude. Okay, and so we're playing, and after we're done playing, they're interviewing us, and they're like, so, asking us questions, whatever. And they're like, so what are some of your favorite bands? And I named out a couple cool bands. I remember naming out Pillar. I'm a huge Pillar fan.
Oh, I love Pillar.
Yeah. And they're like, just completely disgusted with my answers. And they're like, you mean you don't like Five Finger Death Punch?
Yo, Scott Stapp.
And
Creed, man.
There you go. Yeah. And I was like, she probably didn't say it as country as I just repeated it, but like she was disgusted with us. And I don't even know if our little interview even got published because I was like, no, actually, I've seen them live and I still don't like Five Finger Death Punch. And
I don't think we were ever published, man, because you remember that show was so sketch. Because you remember the guy that was like orchestrating the whole thing? He told us like 50 times that night that he was supposed to be the vocalist for Drowning Pool after the other guy left.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then his band was the quote unquote headliner for the night. And they all wore really weird, like it wasn't even like cool Slipknot masks. It was like weird, like Hello Kitty masks and stuff. It was strange, man.
Weird.
It's like when you order your Slipknot mask from Wish.
Yeah.
That one was pretty freaking sketch balls. So,
yeah, man. Y'all ask as many questions y'all want. I mean, we're here, we're doing it.
Well,
y'all pick our brain on anything.
I know you guys got a long trip ahead of you, and so I'll ask one more, unless Trey's got something really important he wants to ask. But I just kind of want to ask about like your plan right now. So, like, obviously, we got you on this show. We want to talk about your cleansing of the temple. We got the name, what you're interested in, what your backgrounds. But like, what's your plan? Are you guys releasing singles to just like a whole bunch of singles? Are you going to do an EP? Are you going to do an album? Like what? So what kind of pimp your band and your stuff, your music right now?
Yes, sir. Well, I'm very excited to see what our future looks like. Obviously, I feel like we all have fairly stable lives as far as like our days go. I mean, Dustin and Jake, they work. Um, Unfortunately, our bassist Crow is up at Brevard most of the time, but we try to get him here as much as possible, and kind of prepare him for what's ahead as far as getting little gigs in some dude's basement or whatever. And for me, I mean, right now it's like I'm at Clemson, full time student, work part time at a body shop, um, and a lot of that for me depends on whether football or whatnot works out. Not saying that I won't be able to devote time to our band and push it forward when I'm playing football. I just know I'll have less time to be over at the market like painting it or doing something random. So I'm very excited to see where we go, and I know that for a fact I'll be able to handle things well myself when my schedule does get busy, because this band really is a priority for me. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, if we didn't think our band was going to do good and we weren't going to play until we're old dudes or we're dead, like what's the point of doing it in the first place? If we're just going to come in, release a couple of singles and then just fade away and seem like some kind of random jam band from our area, there's no point in doing it. So I think our ultimate goal right now is put as much music as we can out there while we're in this underground scene, of course. So once you're done mixing and mastering, whatever, we'll have 3 singles out, and we've spoke about trying to get an EP done, and I think that just depends upon our schedules and committing to it. Like, hey, here's our goal. We need to throw down like 4 or 5 songs, get this EP out, as we go for us. And I'm hoping down the road, whether it's a year from now or 2 or 3, I definitely want to release an album. And I think a few of the songs will consist of us remastering songs like Abbeville and Gates of Hell that we've done way early on.
The transition is unreal.
Yeah, it is. We've gotten consistently heavier as it's went, and we all feel it when we're in the room just jamming together. And that's exciting for me, because that shows me that we're progressing. We're using our ears and listening to the music that we just listen to every day in our cars, and we're putting it into play into stuff we're creating. And in all honesty, I'll end on this. If there's one thing I want for our band, if I put in all this effort, not just for our band but for our venue and everything, if I can make a difference in somebody's life and show them the Lord in any way, even if it's just one person, I'll believe it's all worth it. Because we have a great opportunity to show the world that we're different and we can be unique, and most of all, we can just share Jesus with the whole world. And common with metal shows, it's a bunch of misfits. It's people that have, dealt with loss in their life. They've dealt with, self-harm, just random things like that. And it's like, this is such an opportunity and such a horizon for us to like share that message, because it's such a dark place, overall. So yeah, man, that's my ultimate goal for a thing. It's like, man, just lead people to Christ and show the world how we feel in an aggressive manner, but also in a loving way.
I really want to attack that question kind of head on real quick. We've talked about EPs here recently, more so just because we are working on some newer stuff, even newer than what we've already got, especially what we just recorded. But we're working on 2 new songs currently that are in the works, and then we have enough for an album minus 1 or 2. So we may add a couple here in the next few months. I think by the end of the year, it's definitely feasible for us to have an EP, and then by next year have a full album. I truly believe that
at this rate.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. There's no. We're gonna go as far as we can, and spread the word of God as far as we can in an aggressive manner. We want to make people, we want to slap them in the face with the word of God and everything. We want to make them feel like they want to body slam somebody in God's name.
We're trying to disrupt the order. We're trying to go, against what the norm is.
Yeah. Talking about the opportunities we have, I think the next song we're going to record is a song about abortion. We wrote, what's it been, 5-6 months now? And it's just gotten better over time, but that's the next song we're going to record. And I feel like a song like that's such an opportunity for us to share the word about, what's actually going on in our world, what kind of evil, what kind of spiritual warfare we're actually dealing with. Because I mean, it's like for us, daily babies are dying, and like they don't have an opportunity to scream out. They don't have an opportunity to say, well, it's not fair. So it just feels like at times we're put here because that's our reason. Like we're here to talk about things that nobody else wants to talk about.
Yeah.
And we're here to take up for people who can't take up for themselves. Whether it's some misfit Christian kid who's made fun of for listening to devil music, or it's a baby being ripped out of the womb. I just think it's like Dustin said, it's endless.
Heck yeah. Trey, you got anything else?
Yeah, man. Well, you guys honestly sound a lot like we sounded when we got started playing music and really wanted to get after it. You know what I'm saying? As far as like ministry and stuff like that. And so I just to kind of leave this with you, I just encourage you, man, all you guys, stay faithful. Don't compromise your beliefs. Don't compromise your message at all. Don't be afraid to stand for what you believe in. There will be times when people don't like what you have to say, and that's fine. I mean, you're in the metal scene, right? Like people are supposed to yell at people.
That's right.
It's not a big deal. And so just, stay true to what you guys feel and what you guys believe, and stay faithful, man, because God honors faithfulness, and you guys sound like an awesome crew to be around.
Thanks, man.
We appreciate it, man.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate any knowledge you guys can share with us. We're green and young.
And back at you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for spending the time over here. I had a blast. It was great. Work on the music. I will put this song, at least a little snippet of this song, at the end of this podcast, so that anybody who's listening can get a little piece of it.
Yeah.
If you guys, whenever this comes out, we'll share it. We'll pump out your socials. I'll put all of your information to your Spotify, your Facebooks, all that stuff in the description of the show. Trey, thank you so much, man, for spending time with us tonight. I'm glad we were able to do this. It looked like we might not be able to hook up schedule wise, but thanks, dude, for joining in tonight. And I look forward to doing this again.
Yes. Thanks, Trey. We appreciate you.
Love you, Trey.
Yeah, man.